Now, as we all know, we've been having a humanitarian crisis on the border with immigrants fleeing from El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Honduras. Unaccompanied children are fleeing from gang violence in those countries, as well as poverty. So far, over 50,000 children are in custody of the Border Patrol, and I think personally that it's our duty to help them as they're refugees. But our compassionate Christian conservative Republicans have a bit of a different view. Watch.
That is an invasion of our nation, and most of them are coming across into Texas. They came as an invasion in this nation when Obama declared permission that would be granted under what was called the DREAM Act.
Breaking news tonight is the Obama administration knowingly creating a public health time bomb by sending tens of thousands of illegal immigrant children across the country with potentially dangerous infectious diseases. Are these illegal immigrant children, and certainly none of us blame them, are they bringing in dangerous diseases from their countries?
On the most basic level, we know they already have licensed scabies.
There are 50,000 who are children, who are young people who have come here. Are you calling them invaders? You're saying these children are invaders in your eye.
Foreign nationals that have come into the United States are between 300 to 500,000. My heart is broken for a female college student in Minnesota who was raped, murdered, and mutilated by a foreign national who came into our country. There is an illegal alien who came into our country, and we had a school bus full of kids in Minnesota. 4 children were killed on that school bus because an illegal alien driving a van went into that school
hold on
bus.
a second.
Invaders? Check. Diseased? Check. Foreign nationals? Check. Rapists? Check. And check. This is our right wing when talking about children fleeing gang violence from a government that cannot protect them, mostly as a result of our drug war. But the Republicans, well, they want to do anything that they can to demonize these kids, and to blame this, of course, on Obama for sending them up here so they can distract us from Benghazi or something, or become Democratic voters in like 10 years. It's absolutely crazy. Now, the same people that tout themselves as the party of exceptionalism and morality that organize rallies and protests like the ones in my home state of Michigan, that sends the message of, hey kids, we don't care if you're refugees, go home and die. We don't care, we don't want you here. And that's the reality of it. It's not an invasion though. These kids are fleeing gang violence. In June, 32 kids were murdered in Honduras. Over 400 since January of last year. Now I realize that's nothing in America. You know, that's nothing compared to America, where we've had 20 children wiped out in a day in Newtown. But Honduras has a population of 8 million compared to our 300 million. And according to the UN, Honduras has the highest homicide rate in the world. And most of those are children. And this is how our supposed Christian conservatives treat them. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You know, the fact is that you only love children as long as they're not black and brown. Only the ones stamped Made in America by white, affluent, heterosexual couples that are good Christians just like you. There is a humanitarian crisis. And it starts with you having absolutely no humanity. For more on this whole thing, I want to go to my panel and get your thoughts on the right-wing reaction and what's going on our border. Sean?
Yeah, so the Republican Party is so stupid that this issue is actually tailor-made for them to win on, as long as they don't demonize people. Like even Michelle Bachmann, like, I don't know if you guys know this, but Michelle Bachmann actually adopted some like ridiculous number of kids, right?
23
So she can come in with the she could come in with the compassionate angle, like, oh, I care about kids, I adopted them and all that, like, without like demonizing the children as diseased invaders who only came here to destroy America and vote for Obama for his third term, which he's definitely going to go for. Like, the president did, like, all the Democratic talk about dreamers, the president's deferred action, like, all this stuff, like, kids come over the border, they're saying we're fleeing violence and we think we can stay here, right? Our parents told us we could stay here. There's, like, copies of flyers in Spanish that say you have to get into America by August whatever date, and then they'll let you stay. It's a new law or whatever. So there is, like, a mixed message that is coming from, like, our government or people in our government that is drawing.
Let me correct you there, Sean. They've actually, the Obama administration has actually sent ads down to those
now they're trying,
countries
they're
in
trying
Spanish to say,
of course,
don't come here. There's no guarantee we're going to let you in.
Yeah, they're saying don't come here. We'll have to send you back. Like, the president is the message that he sent out was an indirect message, unintentional message. Like, it was totally, like, I'm not saying it's his evil plan, but, like, people got that message, right? And you can link that message back to the president if you wanted to attack him on this. But the Republicans are making it out to be like the president thought of this and his thing, and, like, these 50,000 kids will somehow commit in-person voter fraud and steal the election for him. Like, there's a way to do this without demonizing the kids. Like, the kids, I understand, but, like, the kids is such a shitty situation because they come here. We don't want to send them back, but we're afraid that if we keep them, then it will send people the message to send their kids over here, and then that's a dangerous trip. So it's a disaster on all fronts. Like the Republicans could score points on this without being assholes. Like, that's my point. And, like,
being assholes is kind of their shtick, though. It's kind of their thing. They're pretty good at it.
All right, and I've talked for too long, so I won't get into the underlying issue. I'll leave that to Jordan French. Launch, Jordan.
Thank you so much. Hey, Jeff, sorry to put you on the spot, man. Is there any chance that you could that you have the entire Michelle Bachmann interview queued up?
No, I don't have the whole thing queued up. It's like 5 minutes long. So
yeah, that's
understandable. Video.
That's understandable. So, all right, so I watched the entire video. Now, I want to acknowledge that there is certainly a lot of validity to the mashup there and to a lot of the things that have been said. I don't know that this is racism so much as xenophobia. Like, if maybe the vitriol wouldn't be there, but I feel like if everybody south of us was white and this was going on, the Republicans would still be the party of close our borders, yada, yada, yada. And, you know, like I say, it may take a little different angle, but that's just kind of their shtick. And you can look to the Ellis Island days and see the same thing happen with Germans and then with the Irish. You know, we can hate white people too. But the one thing I do want to get into, and God, I never thought I would see myself doing this. I'm going to somewhat defend Michelle Bachmann. I'm not going to defend her position is still wrong. I'm not going to defend that. But I am going to defend what her position actually is. And Van Jones tried his best to set her up. Like, it was like, and liberal news stories jumped on it and really spun it. But the problem is, those same news outlets also link to the video, and if you watch the entire interview, you don't get the narrative that they pushed at all. So Jones tried so hard to get her to say that, well, he started off with thanking her for adopting the 20-something kids, or fostering the 20-something kids, and all that good stuff. And then he said, so you're telling me, you know, if you saw these kids, wouldn't you take them into your home? And the answer is, the obvious answer to that question is, no, of course not. You don't abduct children that you see. Like, if you find an undocumented kid, you don't just steal it. That's not the response. There's a great John Mulaney bit about that, like when he says he's against the death penalty, and people are like, so you're telling me if you saw Hitler walking down the street, you wouldn't kill him? No, that's not what we're saying. But you know, because that might just be an old man that kind of looks like Hitler. You know, the same is true with these kids. So Van Jones, he started off with this stupid premise. And then, Michelle Bachmann tried to pivot around it. And so it's one thing if you're a host and you don't let your guest pivot. I'm all for that, especially in politics. So many times we let, you know, politicians get away with non-answers. But what Van Jones did, though, was like take the part of her pivot that he wanted and adopt and bring it back to his original premise. And so she tried to pivot away from the kids and talk about the greater immigration issue, where, again, I still think she's wrong. But he
where she's claiming that 300 to 500,000 foreign nationals are coming in here to destroy America. And
right.
Look, the thing about that entire thing is that she dodged the whole thing. She avoided talking about the children at all. And just focused on how immigrants are horrible and how, these foreign nationals are responsible for rape and torture and murder.
Right, and so that's what I want to get into now. So I'm done defending her, and it's time to get into to turn around and actually put her in her place. Let's look at what she said. Now I want to preface this by saying I realize that these stats are a little bit old, and that stats do change over the course of the year. These are from around 2008, 2010, kind of in that range. So I get that things change. But complete trends don't reverse entirely over the course of a couple of years. So with that in mind, let's take a look at these numbers here. This is the rise of undocumented immigrants in the United States. You can see from 2000 to 2010, there was an influx of about 4 million, right? So Bachman's whole point, based on a few anecdotes, is that these people are coming in here and they're raping our women and they're running over our kids' school buses. So there's the trend of undocumented immigrants into the U.S. Here's the trend of violent crime during those same years. Here's the trend of property crime during those same years. Now, there's a little bit of correlation, does not equal causation, you can say there, although I do think if the premise is true that undocumented immigrants are bringing in crime, you're going to have to really argue against the correlation-causation effect here. But where that argument absolutely statistically breaks down is here's the incarceration rate per 100,000 people, according to the Public Policy Institute of California, a study done in 2008. Foreign-born adults have an incarceration rate, this includes undocumented immigrants, an incarceration rate of around 300, I believe it was 297 out of every 100,000. Native-born adults, over 800. So that factors in, because it's per 100,000, you've got the same ratio there. It factors in the disparity in population. And that also includes people who are in jail for being undocumented immigrants, immigration crimes, which is the majority of what most of these undocumented immigrants are in jail for. They're not in prison for violent crimes as much as they are for immigration crimes. And even with that skewing the numbers, they still have a drastically lower imprisonment rate of being imprisoned than native-born Americans. There is one stat that I want to address and try to get out in front of, and that is that a lot of federal prisoners are foreign nationals, as Congresswoman Bachman would call them. That's because the federal government handles immigration crime. Therefore, they're going to have a skewed number of immigration-related prisoners. So that's a ridiculous stat.
I do want to throw like a slight monkey wrench into Jordan's thing, is because that stat that he showed about foreign-born people also includes people in the legal immigration system. And like we have this crazy thing in this country where if you come here through our ridiculous process, you can be sent home for like 800 million different reasons. So I'm sure, like statistically, in my opinion, that quote-unquote illegal immigrants are probably no different than the general public, except for the fact that they technically commit a crime to come here. But I'm also certain that your people in the legal process are much better behaved than any American group. Because they come here and they know that they could lose that visa in a split second, until, of course, how we actually get half of our immigrants is they overstay their visa. But I'm not including. I'm just saying in general, they're probably way, way, way more polite, because honestly, Americans are just assholes. But Michelle Bachman's point is still ridiculous. Of course, you're gonna point to one anecdote, and a lot of people are gonna get riled up. I mean, if it was my family member that was killed by a quote unquote illegal immigrant, I'd be like, close. Well, I'd be smarter than that. But I could see myself saying, close the border or ban all immigration. But in reality, your kid can be killed by anybody. Something bad can happen all the time. Your kid's far more likely.
Right. People are much more likely to be killed domestically
by somebody they know.
Yeah, by somebody they know than anybody from especially like terrorism. If we're talking about that, you know.
Right. I'm actually surprised, and I'm sure there's clips of it where Louis Gohmert is coming up with this conspiracy theory already that the Muslim terrorist kids have learned Spanish and they're the ones coming up the border. So like it's gonna get much more vicious, and it doesn't need to be. Like there are
Gohmert is already saying that these kids, and I didn't have the clip for it prepared, but he was also saying that these kids are here to rape our women.
Yeah. But I'm saying, like, I'm just saying, like, Gohmert is remember Gohmert is the one who said that Muslims are learning Spanish to sneak in. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten on that. But, like, there are so many, like, legitimate concerns that they're just overhyping with that danger demographic. Yeah, if people come from a foreign country and they don't go through the process, they don't get vaccines, then it could be dangerous and all that. But, like, don't pretend that they're like all bringing in Ebola and like all this stuff, or even if they have lice, like lice is not that hard to get rid of. You buy a shampoo, get some delousing powder. Like it's not they're just
it's a good example of the conservative overhype machine, and that's what we really have a problem with. Is that they're coming up with these you know, alerts. They're using a lot of fear-mongering and scare-mongering tactics, and we see that all around conservative media. Everything that they're against, they always try to find some sort of fear-monger, scare-monger tactic to say, look at that, the liberals are coming for your guns, the illegals are coming across the border to take your jobs and elect Democrats. It's always a threat to them. And that's like the conservative brain, is that it responds much more viscerally to things that are perceived threats.
But the thing is it's so unnecessary, because as I've said, like, you have the president like dead to rights on this. Like, if you play this properly without being vicious, it still kills Obama. Like, it still hurts him. So like it doesn't make any sense to be so vicious that people who are like on your side are going to be like, and I'm actually not on this side. I'm actually very pro-immigration. Like, I believe that you have the natural right to travel wherever you want, like however you want. But like, it's just, you have him. Like, if I'm your political consultant, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're losing so many people. Like, you have him without alienating Latinos if you want it. But they don't want that.
It's because that's part of their, unfortunately, that's part of their platform, is the alienation, is saying that anybody who's the other is a danger to America. And that's really how they've been as successful as they've been, because fear is one hell of a motivator.
Yeah. Well, and then we can't, you know, close this story out without bringing this up. Again, kind of to the point about what we talked about like last night with you know, the American instinct, as soon as you talk about healthcare, is to bring finances into it and talk about how much it's going to cost. There's a similar aspect to that here, and it's, you know, like, we're talking about kids, and even if we're not talking about kids, we're talking about people fleeing. If they're adults, they're fleeing a horrible situation, and they believe America's a better place. One, that's something to be proud of. But two, I understand, as much as it sucks to say it, it's just part of, you know, reality. Like, you can't become the nursery of the world, right? Like America's not a daycare. You have to, you know, there has to be some type of reasonable way.
But there is something to say, Jordan, about taking care of the things, of the issues that we actually caused.
That's where I'm going with this. Exactly. That's where I'm going. Our drug policy created the wars that these kids are fleeing from. We turned a continent into a war zone. So if we're going to try to resolve this humanitarian crisis, which I think we should, you can't just open the doors and let everybody come in. And by the way, that's what Obama's doing. He's enforcing the 2008 law that President Bush signed. But you can't say, okay, well, screw them all, send them away, if you're the reason, and you're being, you know, us, America, the reason that they're fleeing in the first place. And it's just, and then also the thing is, there's a lot of truth to what Sean said earlier about, like, Obama kind of opened the door for mixed signals, like, to where it's easy to get confused about what the dreamer, you know, the push for the dreamers was, and why people might think that's a way to get their kids, you know, to a better place. But let's point out, though, that the reason people thought that might be because Republicans were saying that it was blanket amnesty instead of actually calling it what it was. So they kind of pushed that narrative. But also, like, this is an industry of evil people who smuggle children for money. Like, you don't think they've got a marketing campaign down there selling lies to people about sending the kids to America? You know, you give us your life savings and your kid gets a free home in America. Come on, like, you can't put that on Obama.
But
and facing
to me,
the
like the
do that these children and families do in these places. I mean, I read a story earlier today where one family member, you know, had a body literally chopped up in a bag, put on their doorstep, and like, hey, if you don't make your kid join our gang, this is what's going to happen to them, and this is what's going to happen to you. And
right.
Obviously, somebody, you know, if you're a parent and you're worth a damn, you're going to want to get your kids out of that situation any way that you can.